G'day. Welcome back to part 2 of growing super juicy tomatoes in Australia for our summer. So you might remember the first part, got all the soil ready here in some way, shape or form from pretty much last year's bare patch. Part 2 is all about putting amendments in, getting irrigation lines in, and probably tomorrow put the seedlings in. So there's a range of different things that I'm going to put in here. I mentioned them in the first part. So right here we have a pair of scissors. They will not go in the ground, but they will be used to cut some weed mat. Coffee grinds, grinds out of pod coffee. There's a bit of mould and bits and pieces in there as well as they dry out in the pods before I take the coffee grounds out. That's fine, so I'll spread that down each row. In here we have a very dusty product, which is crushed eggshells. What are they good for? There's a load of calcium and a bit of dust. There's a load of calcium in there, but the third thing, along with another bag because I've run out pretty much, this is pulverised blood and bone. If you haven't heard of blood and bone before, well, that's blood and bone. So 100% organic. And again, this has some amazing elements and fertilisers base in it. I picked up this bag this afternoon. This is actually pelletised, so not granulated like that. But you can see on the back here the typical analysis of this, largely in terms of nitrogen, potassium and phosphorus and potassium, so the typical NPK that you find in fertilisers. 6.3% nitrogen, 5.6 of phosphorus and 1.3 of potassium. Now they all do different things throughout the growth of any sort of plants, but primarily your nitrogen is a heck of a lot of growth, to promote growth. Your potassium comes in where you're flowering and to set your fruit once it is flowering, and the phosphorus helps throughout, but good root systems and so on as well. A little bit of each through the entire life cycle of the vegetables is ideal. You don't want to get too carried away with nitrogen at the beginning, otherwise you just get nothing but growth, full on leaf and no fruit set. So you have to have a balanced fertiliser, and thankfully most of the stuff that you find in your local stores will be balanced as well, but they do vary. Dynamic Lifter, there's a whole range of brands, but this is just the one that we have at the moment, and this is essentially pelletised chicken manure. So it's got a few other bits and pieces in it as well. It's got a bit of blood and bone, fish meal and seaweed in there as well. So from an organic perspective, it's got all of the good things in there that you want to make available to your plants. And if you have a look at the analysis on this one, 3.6% nitrogen, so not as much as blood and bone straight up. 1.1% phosphorus, 5.6 in the blood and bone, and potassium 1.7, whereas the blood and bone on its own is 1.3. So a little more potassium in there. It's a little bit longer releasing, I would imagine, but it's got loads of other bits and pieces in there, so that's good. And we weren't going to have enough to do the whole patch, so that's just another brand of the same thing. So coffee grounds, eggshells, blood and bone, and primarily chicken manure, a few other bits and pieces in it, pelletised chicken manure, will be the 4 amendments that I put on the soil. before planting each of the rows of seedlings. So hopefully that gives them a good kickstart with the compost that's already in there from the other day. And the chickens already being in here doing their business for the last, I think they were in here for maybe 5 or 6 months. So this should be some fantastic tomatoes this year. So I'm going to go and get the irrigation lines, not so much laid out, but I want to figure out how many rows we are going to put in here. A couple less than last year because we got some serious overcrowding. You can probably see a picture up there that shows how overcrowded the bush tomatoes got. We got a lot of tomatoes off them though. And they were Roma tomatoes, so they just stayed there until the end, and we picked them and made a huge amount of passata and sauce, etc. So I just want to space them a little bit more widely this year, and that'll help in for a number of reasons. 1, airflow, less chance of disease. 2, you can get in there and see what's going on for picking, and see if you have any pest pressure that you have to deal with. And I guess that's primarily it, but you know, if they're spaced too closely, you won't get as much yield out of them either. So striking that happy medium between having enough plants and enough fruit. So I'm going to mark out some rows and figure out where they're going to go. I might need to adjust the irrigation lines, and then I'll probably start putting some of this stuff down and just mix it in a little bit. And that might be it for today, to be honest, and then leave the planting of the seedlings to tomorrow, depending on how much time we get this afternoon. So that's the plan for today. Oh, one more thing. I bought some weed mat, which is just I guess there's not too much organic about this, right? It's just a weave plastic type of stuff. I don't know what it actually is, but I'm sure it's some sort of plastic material. We had quite a few weeds in here last year, so I'm going to use this and then just snip a couple of, like a cross in where we put the seedlings, and hopefully peg it down, and hopefully that will do the job to keep the weeds under control this year under the plants a lot better than last year. So that's the plan. You have to have a plan before it can go wrong. So Right, so if you haven't seen what this is before, it's just, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's drip pipe. And you'll see that it's just a plastic pipe that has in this case, about every foot, every 30 centimetres or so, there's a little dripper installed inside the pipe itself. Internally, the water comes along and goes through a series of little, like a maze, think of it like a maze. And it sort of slows the water down, and it makes it a consistent flow out through each of the holes. There's one on each side, so there's 2 per each emitter. And I think they're about 2 litres an hour or something like that. So, and you know, who needs a fancy piece of kit to close the end off? Piece of pipe, bend it over, job done, right? So that's all this brown pipe, and the black pipe is just regular 13mm poly tubing from the store, and that's what we'll be using to grow our fantastic tomatoes this year. So all of this and that with the weed mat this time, seedlings in, bang. So, not sure if you can see what I'm doing here, but just doing a little bit of a trench. A couple of reasons, but mainly to give the irrigation line its line, and it lets me know where we want to put the blood and bone, etc. as well. So boots come in pretty handy for this, but just dig a little trench through. Don't have to be too fancy about it. At the end of the day, it's going into the ground and under some weed mat. And drip line is probably not a bad thing to be under the ground anyway, at least with some dirt over it. You get much better water penetration that way. I think I need to come back this way with this one, because this is where the rotary hoe finished, and I kind of left some indentation in the ground. What do you got here? Looks like a locust tree. So that's probably a little better. This is probably going to have less sun here, but the morning sun is from that direction. You can see from my shadow, sun is setting over there, so all sun in the afternoon, all sun in the morning. So these do get good morning sun for quite some time. So I'll just finish doing these off. Sometimes you don't always plant your own seeds, right? Sometimes one of the best things you can do to grow your own tomatoes is to get some varieties that you actually like. In this case, this is a Roma, probably from last year, judging by that. And plant these out. I mentioned it in part one. If they grow well, save some seed. The seeds have acclimatised a little better to your own environment. They acclimatise a little better to your own soil, and you can save your seeds for the following year. Nothing wrong with introducing new types of tomatoes. That's the benefits of tomatoes. There's so many varieties to pick from, so many different colours, so many different sizes, so many different textures, and so many different uses. And that's why you want to grow your own tomatoes. So I think I can probably spread some of this out. This might be a little dusty. Probably don't need too much of this. It's a bit of a, these are the eggshells. Oh, definitely dusty. It'll all get mixed in at the end of the day. A lot of work goes into crushing eggshells. It's probably dustiest of all of that stuff. Now I don't really get too concerned about, that is dusty. I don't really get too concerned about quantities and that sort of stuff. So some people do, fair enough. But with eggshells, coffee grinds, they adjust the pH a little bit in your soil, but it's not going to be that. It's not like gypsum or lime or anything like that. So it's just something extra, right? And it's a good use of a first world problem. Too many coffee capsules. So I'm just pretty random with where I'm chucking it, but on around the lines there somewhere, and I'll dig it in and around over the irrigation lines themselves, so it'll get mixed in, and by the time the tomatoes get their roots going, they'll have access to all of this stuff. Now, blood and bone, this one's could be a bit dusty as well, so I'll start up the other end and use the pellets down this end. It'll be interesting to see if there's actually any difference, but there shouldn't be. Maybe they'll get to this earlier because it's granulated. You never go short on this stuff. Tomatoes love this stuff. And again, suffering from the wind, so sorry about that. You see it blowing around now. Actually, what I should do is do half a row there. I'll use all of this, but half rows, and use pellets on the other half, and see if I can do a little comparison. I don't know how well it'll go, to be honest, because this bottom half, at the end of all the lines, is where the where it will probably get less sun. But anyway, that's that bit of blood and bone. Now the pelletized stuff. Now, I did bring the scissors, but that wasn't what they were for. It should rip. I put holes in the bag deliberately, so just to give you a bit of a look, it's just a dry pellet. First pellet, there's plenty of pellet products out there that in different types of things, so blood and bone, I'll finish doing these other half rows. That should do the job, I suppose. There's only one thing left. And that's a bit more fancy chicken manure. Also pelletised. It's a bit softer though. Now, start with garbage soil. Add compost, add any sort of organic matter, enrich it. It looks like an old broccoli root or something like that. They'll break down eventually. And slowly improve your soil. Keep adding these sorts of things to your soil, because this is where your tomatoes come from. They love this stuff. Soil and all of the things in it, including worms, etc. Water through the irrigation, sunshine through the hot, harsh Aussie summers, big juicy tomatoes. So a little bit more to go here. So I think this will do. It's more of a pitchfork than a or more of a straw fork or whatever, but it'll do. And importantly, I won't go through the irrigation line. I probably would if I stepped on it, but anyway, you get the idea. So again, just maintaining our irrigation line and try and pull the fork instead of pushing it would probably be easier. And just sort of tickle this stuff in. And planting either side of the line is going to make all of this stuff available to the seedlings. Look at that. I'm not fussed about all these other bits and pieces in the soil. It's all part of making good soil great. flies are a bit sticky today. Had some really warm weather started to come in. Not sure what today got to. Might have been close to 30 again. Well, got to 31 yesterday, so it might be something similar. That's definitely in the mid to high 80s in the F currency. So what do you think so far? Have you learned anything? Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. What do you do? Let me know what you do for your tomatoes, if you do them at all. Is there something in here that's triggered an idea for your own garden? Perhaps something in here that you're wondering what the heck I've done. And feel free to mention that as well, because we can easily bring that comment up and, you know, go over that topic. Not everyone does everything the same way, right? Diversity. If we all did everything the same, like growing rocks as well as I do, then things might get a little bit boring. I have to get a rock picker. I think you're looking at it. This corner here is particularly bad, but hey, there we go. All right, so irrigation lines are in. Lines are in roughly where the plants are going to go. Fertilisers in. Just need to put on the weed mat. Make sure you don't put that through the irrigation line. And there's an old fruit tree on the bottom here that you missed out the joy of me getting hold of that with a rotary hoe yesterday. Take it off down the paddock. But it's just about rotted fully now. But anyway, that's probably it for today. I did a little more than what I thought I was going to do actually. Next steps, weed mat. Probably mound this up a little bit. Weed mat. Get the seedlings in, cut the seedlings into the weed mat. Flush the irrigation lines first. That's a good tip. Over the non-use period, you can end up with a bit of soil coming in the open ends or whatever, and bugs and whatever living in there. So it's always a good idea to flush the irrigation lines, which is also another great reason. Oops, I've got them pegged in now. Why a simple piece of pipe like that over the end of it, you can just fold them open and flush it out. So sometimes simple is the best. All right, so that's it for today. I'll go and get this stuff away and finish the rest off in a short period. So I don't know, tomorrow, maybe the next day, hopefully tomorrow. So depending on what the weather's going to be. I know it's going to be definitely 33 later on in the week. So 33 Celsius is pushing up there, right? What's 100? 38. So get this stuff in the shed and see you at the next step.